I don't know if, soccer players and, volleyball players have the same thing, but I think when you're in a sport like martial arts, the difference is you can start at 4 years old and train till you're 94 years old. You got a lot to talk about, and you have so many different experiences because hardly anyone stays in the same place their entire life. So you're off to a different city and you're doing different styles. And so there is a lot to talk about. And then you have people in common. And then there's more to talk about. So really never ends.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's another episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, and today I'm joined by my friend Audrey Hussey. Audrey, glad you're here. I don't this one took a while. I don't know why. I don't know why. We could have done this a while ago, but you're here now, so I'm glad we're doing this. And if you're new to the show, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go over to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, and I want you to sign up for the newsletter. We are completely retooling. We have a separate martial arts radio newsletter that's coming out. We're going to email you every time an episode comes out and say, hey, here it is. You want the video? Here it is. You want the audio? Here it is. We're going to make it as easy as possible. But wait, there's more. We're going to give you behind the scenes stuff, and it's going to grow. It's free. You can unsubscribe anytime. If you want the best martial arts radio experience, that's what you want to do. Whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. Hit the subscribe tab at the top. Now, this episode is sponsored by Kataro. They've been helping us out for a while. Kataro does some great stuff. Kataro.com. And what do I have for you from Kataro today? So they've got this really cool autism awareness belt. And what's super funny about this is, even though this is what they want me to read today, what was that? A month and a half ago, I was at an event. I was refereeing an event, and a young lady came up wearing this belt that they wanted me to talk about. And I knew instantly what was going on, right? She had autism. And it allowed me to see what was happening here and make sure she had the support she needed and she didn't have to say a word. And I just thought that was absolutely wonderful. Talked to her instructor about it. She's like, yeah, this has been a great thing. And so that's one of the things they're doing, autism awareness. So these belts through March and April, Qatar is donating half of the profits to the International Society for Autism Research. And I will have a belt for you soon. There's one on the way. I'm going to take the blame for that. No, it's not Qatar's fault. Use your code WK10 to save 10% on your first order, which can include that belt. Wholesale discounts are available for this belt. And like everything else Kataro does, all made in the USA to order. So there we go. Thank you to Qatar. And thank you to Audrey for being here.
You're welcome.
You're here. I'm so excited.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And it was me. You asked me quite some time ago, and then I saw you
Yeah.
up in New Hampshire, and that reminded me. And then it took me a few weeks to reach out to Andrew, and I'm glad I did.
Me too.
Honestly, I was a little reluctant. I'm like, why do they want to talk to me anyway? What do I have to say?
Does anybody have to
Probably
say?
too much.
But you put two martial artists together and they just talk. I don't know about I'm thinking of someone now. Someone I know a bit through martial arts. She got married and there were two token martial artists invited. It was myself, I lived locally, and her instructor. She wasn't training anymore. And I think I'd seen this person once at a competition at that point.
Mhm.
And we spent the entire wedding having a couple drinks and talking about martial arts like in a corner by ourselves. And because that's what happens, right? Like I'm
It
sure you've
is.
had that kind of experience.
I don't know if, soccer players and, volleyball players have the same thing, but I think when you're in a sport like martial arts, the difference is you can start at 4 years old and train till you're 94 years old. You got a lot to talk about, and you
Yeah.
have so many different experiences because hardly anyone stays in the same place their entire life. So
Mhm.
you're off to a different city and you're doing different styles. And so there is a lot to talk about. And then you have people in common.
Mhm.
And then there's more to talk about. So
Right.
really never ends.
It doesn't. It never ends. And the drama that exists in martial arts is not my favorite aspect. I know it's not yours either. We've talked about that. But I think the good thing about the drama is it gives you plenty of stories, plenty to talk about.
Good comedy too, really.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Anecdotes and life lessons and things you can pass on to your
Mm,
students. of what to do and what not to
What
do,
not to do. I think the what not to do is often easier to see.
and how you don't want to be.
Right. Which
So,
is kind of my whole theory about growing up is that as human beings, we learn by making mistakes. And as you get older, you've got a whole bunch of stuff not to do, and that leaves you less stuff to do. And you could apply the same thing to martial arts. When you're sparring, don't do these dumb things.
because I
Do
did them.
these things that are maybe less dumb at least, or you haven't figured out if they're dumb yet, and they might work.
I have an actual saying when I tell students, if you're going to kick off your back leg, this is where you're going to put your, and this is where your face is going to land, and ask me how I know. And they all laugh, and I'm like, ask me how I know. So
Yeah.
when I say ask me how I know, they know it's because I've done it, and or don't put your hand right here in front of your face. Ask me how I know, and they'll
That'll go
all
on a
laugh
t
because
sounds like a
you know,
t-shirt.
my co-instructor over there kicked me and I punched myself in the face just the other day. So
Stop.
real talk, real
Why are you hitting yourself? I
stop
can just see that.
hitting yourself. Oh God.
One of the
Sorry.
things that I think you and I have kind of connected on when it comes to martial arts is as much as we enjoy it, and even though, it's our jobs, right? Like you have a school, I have a school, whistlekick, right? Like all these things that are professional. I don't see you as someone who takes martial arts too seriously. And I think
No.
that that's part of where you and I click. Were you raised that way, or is this your martial arts upbringing that gives you that perspective, or your non-martial arts upbringing? Like what? Because plenty of people around us take this stuff way too seriously.
Mm-hmm. Um, I wasn't raised in any sports at all.
Okay.
So um, I grew up watching my dad work and work and work and work. He
Mm.
is a
What did he do?
master. He's a master at what he does. I call him a Renaissance man. So he started out as a sign painter. He's a designer. He's an engineer, but not like he doesn't have a degree.
Hmm.
But what he did, he owned a sign company for many many years, which is not something a lot of people really ever
Yeah.
hear of.
Yeah.
But um, he wanted better for his family. So he
Mm.
worked every day, he worked every night. And that's what I watched.
Ah,
And it's not to say, well, I don't want to be like that and work myself to death. I'll work 12, 14 hours straight on something that I want to do.
right.
But as far as, I was 33 before I started training. I had already
Really?
raised, yeah, I
Okay.
had 3 kids already.
Okay.
I was carrying my infant in a car seat carrier, bringing my then 5-year-old to class. When the adult class would come in, they'd be like, "You should come in. You should come in." I'm like, finally, I
Uh,
did. I put my baby in the corner. I put baby in the corner in his car seat carrier and did class. And when he would cry, he was 3 months old. When he would cry, I would bow out, nurse him, jump back in class. This was it. I'm gonna give a shout out to Martial Arts Training Institute in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's actually in Huntersville, and my first sensei, Scotty Hartzell, was very accommodating. There was another instructor for a few months before that, but they're very accommodating, and it's family school, and them doing that gave me a whole perspective on the whole training thing. You want me in there, you have to make it easy enough for me to be
right.
in there. I People come in and they're like, "Oh, I have a toddler," and I'm like, "Bring him in. I'll put him in the corner and you can play." I don't
Yeah.
care. I mean, I want you in here. I want your family in here. I want your kids to see you training, and that's what that was that. And maybe that's where I didn't take it so
Mm.
seriously. So it wasn't like a super hardcore formal school, but it was great training. And I've been to several other schools since then, but I think it's from watching the things that made people sour on the whole culture that I didn't want in my
Like
school.
what?
just this whole hierarchy. I'm better than you because I'm wearing this belt, when in reality, yeah, I'm watching you. I see. I see. So let's be a little more humble. Let's say, I don't know if I don't know. Um, let's let the students see that we are not icons. We are not, you know, the word master belt doesn't mean you're a master of anybody. You've mastered the basics, and I make sure my students know that you've mastered the basics and then some, because
Master of technique, not master of people.
they but they see us screw up,
They
and then they
should.
talk about it when we're not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Did you see what she did? And she was saying this other thing. Well, I lived that coming up through the ranks. I lived that watching people say things and
Hmm.
do other things. And I'm like, I'm not going to take myself that seriously.
So you had a contrast. Your first school was very open and accommodating, showed you a lot of what you wanted. Then you were able to see what you didn't want at other places, and it helped you dial in what was important to you.
So I have this little ritual I do at the end of class. And I don't know why I started doing it, but as I bow everybody out, I say show, and we all say tung su like that.
Mm.
And then I dance.
I love it. Do
And
the
my
others dance with
students,
you?
but now my students are, yeah, I go like this. We all go tungsu, and then we all do our little dance. And the other day, I was asking my students, because these are 6 and 7 year olds, 8 year
Yeah.
olds, and I'm like, all right, so does anybody know what these words mean? And I'm going through the bowing and the attention stance and the ready stance, and I said show. Show means relax, right? And I said, but what does this mean, tungsu? And they all go, it means dance. I'm like, oh, oops. so so I'm like, well, nope. If so I had to explain to them what tangsu means, and I said the dancing is because I'm happy. The dancing is because we just had fun, and I want you to walk out the door with a smile on your
Mm.
face, and that's why I dance at the end of class, because I'm happy. And so I'm hoping from they take that away. What they take
Mm.
away from that is, you know, dancing is for when you're happy.
Right.
Dancing is for any time, and we're not so serious. We're not, you know, I don't like, I don't connect with the whole, dour master stand up in the room and never connects with any students, walks out of the room as soon as class is over and doesn't talk to anybody. I mean, I never connected with that. And I think students should be able to come up and give me a hug after class, and they do. And I feel like that makes, I want this to be their home,
Mm.
their second home. I want this to be their happy place. I don't want them to ever be afraid to talk to me about anything. Um, and I've seen that even with my own kids, with other instructors. I don't want to talk. I'm not saying nothing because I don't want to talk to him. He's scary. Why?
Hmm.
Why is that person scary? What are they going to do? So that puts them out in the public, afraid to talk to authority figures, afraid to stand up for themselves. That's not what we're about. At least
Couldn't
I
be
don't.
anyway.
No, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So that's why that energy, that's why I feel that energy should be that way for me,
Mm.
for my students. If they want somebody more serious, if they want to get yelled at, go somewhere else. Because I've never yelled at a student, and I'm never going to.
Yeah.
So
I just had someone that I'm going to do my best to sanitize this. So even if they listen, they won't know I'm talking about them. I wouldn't imagine they would. Former students, two members of a family, and they came in and they wanted what they had, which was not us.
I've had that happen.
And that happens, right? And I get that. And part of what they were used to was this extreme regimenting and formality. And we operate a formal class, but I work really hard to find where's the line between structure and fun,
Hmm.
because to me, that's the sweet spot where people are going to learn the most.
Agreed.
And, the last thing I ever want to do is disparage someone, but I saw a lot of opportunity for rapid progress in these two people that came to my school that was not realized because of the way they had been training, because of the hyper focus on that regimented
Hmm.
structure. Because everybody's individual, right? Everybody needs a little bit of their own flavor in there because our bodies are different, the way we process information is different. And they stepped away and I reached out to them a couple times and they're like, we kind of, we don't like this, a couple of these things that you do. And I'm like, interesting,
Interesting. I love when
thanks,
people say interesting.
thanks for giving it a shot. You're always welcome.
Right.
Right. Whereas people that had started from scratch alongside them leapfrogged them and they didn't notice,
Were
or at least
they
they didn't acknowledge.
were they used to being held back because of some sort of structured?
I don't know if it was being held back. I think it was. So I have this theory that the first martial art you learn is kind of like the first language you learn.
Hmm.
Becomes the letters, the words, etc. And I've done a number of other things, but they all look like karate. When I did taekwondo, it was, my taekwondo forms were a karate guy doing taekwondo forms, and I worked really hard to pull it back as much as I could, but it was my understanding of my own body and how to move it
Hmm.
in these ways. And I think it was some of that is that this is what they started with, and they went on to something else, and there was a voice in the back of their head for right or for wrong telling them this isn't the way to do it.
Mm, they're stuck in a
They're
track of
kind of,
thinking.
yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because I have a couple students who came in from other styles. One is a taekwondo as a kid. He's an
Mm-hmm.
adult now, and he's not so much struggles. Only when I'm fussing at him about making it Tang Sudo way, but and it's just little details. Otherwise, he's intense. He's sharp, and why am I fussing about one stupid little thing that he does different than the traditional Tang Sudo way?
Mm-hmm.
When in doing so, the rest of his technique suffers. So I don't care if his back foot's sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it pulls him off of that straightforward Tang Sudo kind of front stance way, but he looks great doing his forms, and he's more powerful doing it the way he was trained up. And now I have a
Mm-hmm.
little girl. Same thing. She's only 7. She's so intense, and she came from a different style, like I said. And my brain's going through it again. Do I correct until she's so discouraged, thinking she's not doing it right when she is doing it right. She's just not doing it the Tang Soo Do way,
Right.
but she looks fantastic. So I'm kind of letting her like evolve into it. And I'm seeing some really like fast progress because her mind is not stuck in, oh, I have to change it. And
So
when I
how do you
started,
how do you
huh?
reconcile that, right? Because this was something, and you know, the irony here is you and I talked before we started that this was about you, and I could go on a 20-minute rant about this subject, so I'm not going to. But the idea that what is we'll use the word correct in the school is a certain way, but there are other correct ways to do it depending on the context.
Mhm.
Right? You might have, and even within the school, even within your curriculum, the correct way to do a form versus, well, maybe you want to change these things for competition if you support that, right? So that could be correct out there
Right,
versus maybe different instructors in your higher up lineage want to see that form in a slightly different way. So
right.
correct is still subjective. How do you handle that, like with that situation with that little girl?
Okay, so I was just about to talk about one of my first Tang Sudo instructors,
Okay.
and two things he said to me that stand out, and I still we're still close. Um, he was at my master belt grading, which was very cool because he was
Cool.
my first Tangsudo instructor,
Nice.
but at a different school he's
Hmm.
at now. He said to me, "We are not," because I already had a black belt in Kempo.
Hmm.
And I was very concerned that people would treat me like I was new. That's an ego
Hmm.
thing. That
Hmm.
was an ego thing. Um, a lot of them still did, even though I had been training longer than them and knew more, but just a different style.
Hmm.
And I'm like, so I had to humble myself and that was a life lesson for me. But he said, we're not replacing what you know, we're layering on top of it.
Hmm.
So if I'm going to say that to my students, I need to mean it.
Hmm.
All right. So, and he said, what is correct and what is right are two different things.
Hmm.
You can be correct and not be right. You can be right and not be correct.
Hmm.
Right. So, and I'm sure we can come up with a million examples of that. So what I do now in my school, and I try to, I met a really great Kenpo instructor, different. I was in Kenpo. This is Kenpo, but it's very similar. And when you say one, everybody just thinks the other anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Hey,
But
hold on. Because there are people who are watching. If Craig, if you're watching, right? Um, I I don't think there is a more ridiculous thing to argue about in martial arts than whether Kempo has an M or an N, considering it's translated from a language that doesn't even use the same letters. I think it is the silliest thing to argue about that
I
I've
just
ever
say it.
heard in martial arts. There are
I
so
say
many,
it
like, there are
as it
dumb things to argue about. That's the
Yeah,
dumbest. Go
it
ahead.
is. Well, it is only in that if that lineage thing is so important. I mean, I trained in Shorinji Kempo, but you know what? I'm going to say it fast, and you can just fill in the blanks. How about that, karate
Yeah,
world?
let me,
Let's.
and I want to clarify because I'm realizing that there's a part of my thought process here that I left off the table. If your school is Shirinji Kempo and you spell it with an M and that's important to you, that's great. It's when you go to other people and you're like, no, you need to spell it with an M. You're spelling it with an N. Or they're coming to you and they're like, oh, no, you can't put an M there. That's got to be an N. That's where I think it's done.
Well, the great part is I can teach it in my school along with my Tang Sudo, and nobody cares. The
Right.
parents don't care. My students don't care. And I tell them, this is from Kempo. And if you ever want to try, a different style and learn some of this to add to what you're doing, find a Kempo school, find a Kenpo school. Don't care which one. But it's going to teach you more self defense oriented, fast striking. And this is good stuff. This is
Hmm.
really good stuff. It's what I came up doing. Um, and so I use it when I'm training with my Tang Sudo.
Mm.
I use it when I'm training my kids. And I don't even remember where my story was going. Oh, Master Kavar talking about layering on top of
Yeah.
um, what you're layering. And he said, right and correct are two different things. So if I'm training the student and she's not pointing her foot the right direction, or she's not chambering high enough for Tang
Mm.
Sudo people, what would I rather she take away from that class? That I'm nitpicking and not seeing how really talented she is? Because I see her.
Yeah.
I see you, kid. I see what you're doing, and I see what you know already. I'm not going to hold you back. Now, maybe when she's a red belt, an apprentice, I'm going to start because now she'll be in better control of her body, which she's
Hmm.
not right now. They are not. Um, then I'll tweak.
Yep.
I'll worry about that later. That's one great thing I learned, coming up in the ranks and then starting to teach is you can't correct everything at white belt. You can't correct it. You have to slowly mold them as they get more mature in this art, which I'm starting to see. It's taken me a while, but I've been teaching I've been teaching for like 10 years,
Yeah.
but they weren't my students before. They're mine now. I'm responsible for them. So it's like being a parent. You only have so long to teach your kids
Hmm.
everything you want to know, and I hope I don't screw it up. Well, a
And you
mother of
can't teach
10,
them everything at once.
right, and a mother of 10 once told me, "You're going to screw it up." a mother of 10, once told me, "You're going to screw it up. Some of these kids are going to be real messed up. Some are going to be great." That's the same
Is that why
thing.
she had 10? She was rolling the dice. I'm going to get a couple good ones out of this. One of
Right?
them is going to take care of me when I'm old.
But it's true. You got it. Some students are just never going to click. They're never
Yeah,
going to get it. They don't want to get it. They just want something to do. You have to
right,
recognize that, give them what they need. And the others who want to, be competitive or whatever, give them what they need.
right.
So,
One of the things that we do, and I think more schools could benefit from doing this, is we've found a way in our culture to not make rank progress the be all end all, which
mhm.
allows people to, if they want to come in and train, and if they come in with prior experience, they're like, I really don't want to change this. I don't want to do it your way. Cool. We've got some people. I've had multiple people with black belts in other styles who they didn't really want to change. They wanted to come for a workout. Awesome. So I back off on my corrections because I know that that's how they feel.
Do you rank them?
98. Hmm?
Do you grade them up?
Nope.
They don't want to. They just want to do what
Yeah,
they're
they
doing.
just they just wanted to come and train and get a good workout and everything. And that's really cool. And where it becomes even more cool is when my students spar, because now they're learning from each other. So
Hmm.
we've got our curriculum, but everybody else is bringing in their own context for
That's
training,
cool.
and they're learning from each other, and they're doing weird stuff that's great.
I've always kind of in the back of my head dreamed about opening a karate school for people who don't want to do karate.
Mm.
Like, I guess there are schools like that. You see them, and they there's no uniforms. There's no
Oh, I
um,
see what you're saying.
just wear whatever you want. Come in. There's
Yeah.
no ranks, but I'm going to teach you all this stuff. And guess what? They're going to be just as skilled as the kids coming out with their first degree or whatever. They're going to know just as much.
It's
Do
a
I have to
different
grade them?
culture. Most of my students don't have uniforms.
Yeah. Oh, see, you're doing
I've
it.
even got, because having a uniform is not a prerequisite to rank. I have a yellow belt who has never worn a gi.
Hmm.
She has a belt. She doesn't
She's
wear it on her street clothes. That's a rule. But she still lines up as a yellow belt.
right. She just doesn't wear the belt.
It's just
I mean, why do we care? I mean, I like the tradition. Don't get me wrong. I love the
absolutely.
tradition of Tang Sudo. I love the uniform. I love the belts. I love the ranking system because it gives you a goal. I used to stand in line and I walked in a school as a black belt in a different style, and they let
Hmm.
me wear my black belt until I graded. And then I
Hmm.
was a blue belt, and then I was in the back row.
Yeah,
And I had to work my way along. And for me as an adult, it was kind of a challenge. It was a personal challenge, and I'm like, I'm going to get to that spot, that
yeah,
last spot, and I did. I was at that last spot for quite some time, but that doesn't work for everybody. That's
right.
not everybody's motivation. Some
Hmm.
people, like you said, just want to train and they don't care. And when I get the guilt because somebody's child just isn't putting in the effort, or they're not there enough, or whatever, and I say, I cannot grade you because you don't know the material.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay. Like, fine.
And are you okay with that? Because I
I
had to
am.
learn to become okay with that. That was probably the biggest transition for me.
That's tough. That's tough because I take it. I don't take it personally, but I used to feel like it was a failure on my part. But
Yeah.
maybe some way I'm teaching isn't reaching them. It's not motivating them. But I don't think that's it at all.
Or maybe
They're
their
just
motivations are just different.
right, and you can't figure out everybody's motivation.
Right.
And I don't sit there and say, well, you're not going to grade if you don't da, 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 da. I never say that.
Mm.
I say I want you guys to I want to be able to promote you, but I don't want to send you out there in the world thinking you're at some level when you're not there yet.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more embarrassing than seeing a black belt, compete or whatever, and they clearly have not been,
Mm.
trained
Yeah.
to the best of somebody's ability, or maybe they just Maybe they just won't get better. I don't know. But it's kind of embarrassing though when you see it. And I don't want my students to go out there in the world thinking that they're skilled in areas they're not,
Yeah.
just because they're wearing a black belt.
One of the things that we did that I think has been so important to our culture, because what we did an episode on this, and I'm not going to turn this into a repeat of that, but I spent 2 years planning out how I wanted to run my school before it actually happened.
Mhm.
And one of the things we settled on was I didn't want to be the one pushing people to advance in rank. So how do we solve that? Oh, so we have a pretest that they have to initiate. Now, we might encourage it. We might say, have you thought about doing your evaluation? It is a one-on-one with an instructor, zero consequence,
Mhm.
checklist. Oh, you're missing these things. Here, take your sheet, go work on those things. And until they have all of those things checked, they're not eligible to test. And it's allowed some people to come in and are like, I have no interest in rank. I just want to come train. And then there are other people who are super motivated and that belt means a lot to them and it allows them to drive. And I don't have to sweat it. And they
Right.
train together and it takes me out of it and I haven't witnessed any jealousy. No jealousy. In fact, I've seen the opposite. I have
Mhm.
had students tell me, well, I don't want to test because I don't want to distance myself from this other person over here that I really like.
Mhm.
And I'm like, hold up. No, no, no. I'll tell you what, you
You
go tell
started
them
it.
that and they're going to yell at you
Mhm.
because they want to support you in your
Right.
individual progress. And I suspect schools could implement that pretty simply. Hey, before you can test, you've got to do a pretest. It's up to you.
Mhm.
You let me know that you want to do that. Here's the structure. We'll do it after class. It takes 10 minutes, whatever.
I do, and I tell my students, because my gradings are not tests. It's a
Hmm.
promotion. And I mean, I'm watching them. I don't have that many students that I cannot watch each individual child, person, whatever, every single day. I can tell you, I can point at any student and tell you exactly,
You know
what
if
they're
they're
going
ready.
to do and how they're going to move and why they're moving that way and how they
Yeah.
can improve themselves. And if they're not doing it, um, that's on them. But I
Mm,
only grade every 4 months.
mm.
I hate, this is personal. I know every school is different and they're very successful. Fine, whatever. This is for me. I hate having to constantly remind the students there's a grading coming up and you're not going to grade if you don't blah, 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 blah. So if I want to, spend an entire class lifting weights so that my students know how to lift weights and why, and this is what we're doing, and this is how you work your hip flexors so you have better, stronger
Hmm.
side kicks and you won't hurt yourself. And so I can work on the mechanics of how we get stronger doing the things.
Right.
Um, I can do a whole class on, weapons and whether it's in my curriculum or not, which I'm
Hmm.
starting to put it more into my curriculum. Um, but I can spend a whole class just diving over things and rolling, or just, just having fun, but at the same time they are learning something, and then
You're
we'll,
not locked to the test, is what I'm hearing.
I'm not teaching to the test. And so I can have classes that are really dynamic and fun, and and then other times, today we're gonna focus on forms. We're gonna focus
Hmm.
on forms. We'll pull a technique or two out of a form and just use that as the takedown drill or whatever. And I can be more structured. Um, I'm not a big fan of structuring curriculum. I know what they need to know, and I get around to it. I probably should be more curriculum
Well,
oriented.
here's a question because I
No,
suspect there are
no.
people watching and listening that would say the same thing about them. But here's a question because I spend a lot of time thinking about this. When you look at your school and your students, as they progress, are they progressing at the rate that you want them to? And do they know at those intervals what you want them to know? And if both
Um,
of those things are true, I think you're good.
no, what I'm starting to see is, again, I've only been doing this my own school for 4 years, And I saw it in I had a homeschool class at my other school where I was
Hmm.
responsible for their training up to apprentice black belt. And I would always, at gradings and things, I would look at them and I would look at the rest of the school and I would
Hmm.
see that they were, not all of them, y'all have your standouts, right?
Hmm.
And they were in line with what everybody else was doing. They
Hmm.
were fine. They made me proud. And so I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can get them from point A to point Z. And with my students, I'm starting to relax a little because there's a certain level they get at where they just start to click.
Hmm.
And before that, you can't push them because they're going to get frustrated and you're sucking the fun out of it. You're sucking the air out of the room
Yeah.
when you're constantly, fix your foot, fix your hand, fix your foot, fix your hand. So I just kind of throw it out there as as a suggestion. And then one day they just start doing it.
Right.
If they're not going to do it, they're never going to do it. They're autonomous creatures. We can't make
Hmm.
them do it. Am I going to hold him back from having a black belt because his foot sticks out a little bit? When he's so focused on that beautiful striking power.
Right.
Isn't that what we're looking for? So, are all the pieces ever going to fit together? Maybe, maybe not. But at some point, green, upper green, red belt, they start to turn that little corner
Hmm.
and then they start to be aware of what they're doing.
Hmm.
So I came up with a phrase and I say, tighten up. If by
Hmm.
that time they don't know what that means, then I'm not doing it right. So I say tighten up, and all of a sudden, everybody just kind of nails it down. Even the kids who never nail it down, they nail it down. And then I don't have to sit there and go, you're fine.
Hmm.
So I
What I think
snag it.
I'm hearing, you've brought this up a couple times with how you see a black belt. I think in a lot of schools, a black belt is you have met these minimum criteria of all of these things. And what I think I'm hearing from you is you're looking at an average that, okay, maybe the foot's turned out, but they really excel over here.
Mm-hmm,
And so I want to make sure, a black belt is they average out to be at this level.
mm-hmm.
And if they've got one or two things that are off, I'm not going to hold them back for that. You're looking at you've got a more holistic approach to what rank means.
I feel like I do, and I feel like it's a healthy
Mm.
approach. And if you go from school to school to school and look at everybody, look at all their black belts, and again, Tang Sudo has certain specific things that kind of
Hmm.
define it. So you're looking at Tang Sudo as opposed to karate or
Sure.
you know, even Taekwondo. But it's important to me. I'm going to do it this way because I like the way it looks. I like the way it feels. I feel more balanced. I feel more powerful. Whatever. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Come here. So you got me off my track.
For
Um,
anyone listening, I believe that's a dog that you're
that's a
talking to. Yeah,
that
and
was
now there's a dog in frame, and if you're not watching the show, you've missed out.
he's the big scary Doberman.
Oh, he's terrifying.
He's a whining little baby and he wants attention. So anyway, that holistic approach I think is working for me because it acknowledges it acknowledges what they have done and what they are able to
Mm.
do without dragging them down because of little details.
Right.
You go out and you eat a fantastic meal, but all you do is piss and moan about the salad. I mean, like
Right.
calm down.
Just don't eat the salad. You can still go back to the restaurant even if you don't like the salad.
Well, and what if, you've got a great fighter, but they stink at forms
Hmm.
because maybe they don't understand the connection forms has to fighting or the connection forms has to self-defense or the connection it has to, and you can explain it to them 1,000 times.
Or maybe they
Why?
struggle with memorizing sequences.
And that's possible too. I do the forms with them. So I
Mhm.
mean, they can't really mess up. Is it so important that they memorize the forms for the sake of memorizing the forms, or is it important that they understand what's inside the forms and what they're doing? I wasn't given that. So for me, the technique of perfecting every little speck of it, but I
Mm.
wasn't no clue what I was doing or why I was doing it. That doesn't make any sense to me. So now my approach is more, this is what you're doing. Grab the guy and punch him, grab the shoulders, slam down into your knee. And I
Mhm.
say it like that as we're doing it so they understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Mm.
And it makes it more fun for them. So instead of, make them move like an airplane just to get them to look at it. You've heard that one?
But I'm gonna use it. Oh, you're giving me flashbacks to W blocks.
Okay.
Shout out
W
to my
blocks.
Taekwondo friends.
Okay. So
We universally hated.
or scoop the ice cream. Scoop the ice cream.
We bought sand shovels.
What?
We bought sand shovels to teach scoop blocks.
Oh
We put
gosh.
shovels in their hands. It's amazing. It's so much fun.
But what does it look like when they're black belt?
I don't know.
Are
We
they
haven't gotten
still?
there yet. Although we found that the adults have a much harder time orienting how to hold a sand shovel. They come up here and the shovels like in these weird angles. I'm like, have you been to a
Right now
beach?
you're now
Do
you
you
now
know how to
you're
dig in the sand? The kids get it. They're like, oh yeah,
like you said, doesn't work for everybody. But I mean,
right.
when I teach blocks, I'm like shields, like just so, and I do it like that so they see the intensity they
Yeah.
need. So I start, don't let me boop your nose. Don't let me boop your nose. And they start smacking my hand real hard so they get the block
Yep.
because nobody wants their nose booped. But they're
Right.
laughing as they're doing it because that's what they connect to. And I love hearing other people's ways of training these things because I might steal something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the sand shovel thing, but I'll give it to or I'll say, do a windshield wiper or, make it look like, an elephant trunk, which I
Yeah.
still haven't figured out the low block thing, but um, if if it works, use it, right? But
I'll share this with you because I don't know that we've talked about this on the show. The number one tool that I stumbled on developing, I had some old pool
I,
noodles.
I
I don't
can't
know
say
why
it
that's
either.
hard to say right now. And some old PVC, and I just cut the noodles and made foam like
Foam
really
blockers.
chintzy swords, foam swords. And we found that especially kids respond completely differently to swinging one of these foam swords at them for blocking practice than a hand or a foot.
Do you think better or do they freak
Significantly
out?
better, much less intimidated, especially early on.
That's funny because when I use, those boffer things they have,
Yep,
or the just the foam eskrima sticks,
yep.
just basically what that is. They, they're doing this where I say, "Don't let me boop your nose," or
Mm,
whatever. I come in slower. I
interesting.
say, "Here comes the slow poke." Then they're not intimidated at all. And
Sure.
then I say, "Smack it out of the way," and they're like, "Bam!" Um, I use so, and pool noodles are good. I don't use them because it makes the kids think it's playtime for
Mm,
me. So I use pipe insulation,
okay.
and then I have this like I don't know 8 foot long um, pole.
Hmm.
Well, it's maybe seven. I don't know, whatever. And I use it to play jump the stick. And I swing it around on the floor in a circle, and they have to jump over the stick. If I hit your foot, you're out. And then I pick it up, and then they have to duck. So I do duck duck jump. I call it duck duck jump. And these kids like they made it into this violent thing where they when I hit they'll jump up and down, land on the thing and fall, and they all knock each other over.
This
And
will always turn it into violence.
that's fine. I don't that's on them. I don't want them to be afraid to fall down. We're
Sure.
on a mat. But the pool noodle, like the insulation foam is thinner, obviously.
Hmm.
So it's easier to handle for us.
Right.
And then they don't look at it and go, oh, a toy. I just got to make sure the ends are longer than the pipe. And I duct tape it really well
Right.
around it because that's another problem. Um, that little tape glue doesn't work. But if I look at one of my black belts, which I've only ever promoted one person that I trained from white belt all the way to black belt. So I've promoted one second dan to third, actually
Mm-hmm.
two second dans to third dans, but they were already second dans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've trained kids up to apprentice um, at my other school that I was at. And then they got taken over by someone higher than me because
Mm-hmm.
I was good enough to train them all the way to apprentice, but not good enough to train them that one next grading. Um, but looking at the one I did, and he was very sharp. I was really proud of that. Now, was it
Mm.
just that kid, or was it me, or was it a combination of both? We'll never know. We like to think it's us, and maybe we had a lot to do with it. We just
Mm.
gave them what they needed, but what they do with it is an entirely different story. Excuse me. I'm gonna go let him out if you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Go for it. So what were we talking about? We're talking about
We were
promoting people
talking
up
about
and
the
most
holistic
of,
approach,
yeah,
and
it's kind of been the
I don't,
theme of what we've been talking about today.
yeah, which is strange. I didn't think it was going to go there.
It
Actually,
rarely does. When I sit down with someone, we generally don't get into any of the stuff that they think we're going to talk about
hmm
because most of the time people they they sit down and they're thinking about it like a resume because that's how a lot of martial arts podcasts go. Where did you train? Who did you train with? What is your
yeah,
rank? What are your competitive
there's,
successes, right? Like and
nobody.
sometimes that's relevant to the story,
hmm
but your story as a martial artist, I think, is so much more than those facts. It's about what you've done with those factual things. And I
And
think what's cool is even if someone doesn't train, you might have some of your friends that don't train that watch or listen to this, and it gives them insight into who you are. And I think that that's so much more interesting than you verbalizing a list of dates and
yeah,
times and
well, I mean,
places.
my story is a little different because it jumps from state to state, and
Hmm.
it spans. It does span 26 years, but that's nothing in comparison to people who've been training for 60 years or whatever. But the
But it's
fact
more
that,
than it dwarfs people who've been training for 4 years.
well,
It's all
it's not just
relative.
that. I mean, how many, and I try to encourage women, especially, and maybe
Mm,
that's, where my story kind of touches people a little deeper as females is because, we're home with babies. We're
mm,
home with babies. Can we start karate? Sure. Yeah, you can. Bring the baby. If
mm,
somebody made it accommodating and then, okay, well, we got to move halfway across the country. You got to start over now. So, the struggle to get at that first black belt level
mm.
was real, and most people would have quit and never gone back. But that was something I wanted to do for me, and I wanted to get my kids into it. And now I've got 3 kids, and now I've got 4 kids, and now I've got 5. So I put them all into a little Goju-Ryu school,
Mm.
and I trained there a little bit. I trained there for a year or so, and it was really cool. Goju-Ryu was an eye-opening experience. Um,
How so?
it's just very hardcore. It's
Yeah.
it's it's very old school. So I've trained in every possible way where you go in there and by, halfway through class you are ready to vomit. you know?
That is a rugged old school class. Yeah.
And when I say my kids had to, run uphill in the snow both ways, they did. They asked
Mm.
their warm-ups were running up and down this guy's gravel dirt driveway 25 times every morning.
Wow.
And I let them. They were homeschooled, so it was, it's like you got nothing else to do. Let's just go do this. And I think it did a lot for my oldest two. Um, and then we settled on the Tang Sudo school, but the other, again, bringing my kids I had all my kids in these schools.
Mm.
at one point anyway. Um, Two of my daughters got to second degree.
Hmm.
Two of my sons got to apprentice black belt. My youngest son actually helped me open my school. He was
Oh,
still
cool. I didn't know
homeschooling.
that.
I opened right in the beginning of the pandemic. Well,
Hmm.
in the middle of the pandemic, I opened. Before that, I did an after school program. He would come with me because he was homeschooled and he would help me teach the kids there. Then, when we closed, we worked out in the park with the school I was attending at the time. We ran classes in the park. Um, and then when I opened the school, he was there with me. He was like,
Mm.
15. No, he's 18 now. So he was 14. And I graded him up to apprentice, but then he wanted to go to high school. I think the loneliness of the pandemic really got
Yeah.
to my youngest two, and they wanted to, my second to the youngest was already in high school, but he decided he wanted to go to high school, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna lose him. I'm gonna lose him. He's not gonna be in my school anymore. But that's okay.
Hmm.
It's his journey. So I put him in high school, and of course, I lost him as an instructor, and he was a good instructor too. But he joined football, and he had a great high school experience as someone who had never walked into a school before. His first day of
Awesome.
school was freshman year of high school, but he did great, and I attribute that to the fact that he had confidence. He had
Mm.
that confidence from 8 years of martial arts before that. So um, when I opened that school, excuse me, in the middle of a pandemic, um, as a newly divorced, middle aged woman in the middle of a pandemic, if I can do that, then anybody out there who has a dream, who has,
Mm.
a goal or whatever, or who thinks, my life is over because XYZ, no, it's not. You could there's things you can do and you can succeed. And I'm not getting wealthy off of a karate school or anything, but it allows me to fulfill my mission, and my mission has not changed since I stepped foot in the first karate school I went to. And it isn't going to change ever. It is the same mission I've had since I started raising my kids. um, and I can do this until the day I die,
What
which
is
is,
that mission?
it's to be empowered. It's to be
Mm.
empowered to stand up for yourself. I mean, literally. And yeah, everybody has the "I was bullied" story, but it changes who you are. Being bullied changes who you are and who you would have been. So you need to get that back, and you need to fight for yourself whenever you need to. And this has manifested itself in my life so many times, right down to being fined by the state for traveling during the pandemic. They fined me $2,000 for I went to New Orleans at the beginning of the pandemic when I got separated. I'm like, I always wanted to go to New Orleans. I think I'll go to New Orleans because nobody's there. So I did. And apparently the governor had signed some executive order mandating that we register our trip and do all this stuff, and,
Mm.
uh, what do you call it? Isolate, quarantine yourself and test and da 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 da. Well, I didn't know. I mean, I'm like, I flew out of Providence. I had no idea what was going on. So I got back, and one of my former neighbors and friends turned me in.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah, they have the 1-800 numbers. She turned me in like I was killing puppies or something. And, when I got back, I tested because I wanted to know if I was sick,
Sure.
whatever. But I got two kids, and now I'm single, and they have to go places and they have to do things, and I need groceries. So
Yeah.
I didn't, it came back negative. So I just went and did what I was going to do. Seemed sensible to me, but apparently not. So they fined me. They plastered me on the news.
What?
I got hate mail, like DMs, hate mail saying
Not
I
fun.
was killing grandmas.
Right.
I I fought it. Long story short, I fought it using one of the Republican senators. One of our representatives actually represented me, and I sued the governor. I took a, I filed a countersuit because they found me guilty, and so this was through the Department of Public Health. which is like a little banana court where some clerk gets to be an investigator and doesn't have a clue what they're doing. These people were so
I want to
backwards.
I want to fast forward the political stuff,
Sure.
right? Because this is um,
Well, I won, so
right. I know this story.
yes, you do, but
I do.
not like everybody.
I know this story in detail.
Hmm.
But I want to. How did you go from that to wanting to open a school? That's
Well, I was already teaching. I already had my Parks and Rec program. I was
okay.
already teaching in my other school. It had been I've been planning this school
But
in
at a
my head
time when most people
for
pulled
7 years.
back, you went and you charged forward, and I think that's an important part to talk about.
Well, think about it. Nobody, kids didn't have anything to do.
Mm,
They had nothing to do. And I was watching my own kids sitting home with nothing to do,
mhm,
right? So the worst thing you can do during a time of sickness is sit on your butt and do nothing.
mm,
And I was angry. I was angry for the fact that we had to pull back in so many areas of our lives, and I needed a job. I
mm,
needed a job, and this is what I know how to do. Yes, I am a graphic designer. I'm an artist. I can make money, but this is more fun. It gets
mm.
me out there, and
It's far
I
more
wanted
fun.
to teach other people's kids how to stand up for themselves. And this isn't just about fighting. This is about, not allowing other people to define you, to put
Mm,
you where they want you, to tell you what you have to do. I've never been a big fan of that. Somebody tells me I have to do something, then I have to not do it. And that's, how I got to that point. And during the pandemic, I was already running my program, and I'm like, well, wait a second. These people cannot shut me down. There's no way. This is ridiculous.
mm,
I opened the school in November of 2020.
mhm,
So, we were all masked up and whatever. And this was in a little town, a little tiny town in Rhode Island. And, when I opened my doors, I think I had like 11 students walk, that I already had in the park. But I got a few more. And like within a month, the Secretary of State of Rhode Island shut us down.
mm.
So I'm like, okay, so I tried the private lesson thing because I can't do group classes. So we'll
Yep.
all do private lessons. So I scheduled them all, and then they caught wind of that and they shut that down. So for 7 weeks, I was like, okay, this is it. I guess it's not going to work.
Mhm,
But somehow I managed. They kept paying me. They kept paying me because they wanted their kid to go there. And I
right.
said, well, you can have unlimited, makeups, and if y'all want a private lesson here and there, that's fine. And, I returned the favor by being available to their kids,
Mhm,
spending the extra time with them. And, we opened back up, and I just kept going. I just kept going. I know a lot of karate schools closed.
yeah.
And I think, well, it's most likely because when you lose half of your customers, if you have 150 customers, students, and 100 of them stop paying you, but you're in a 2,500 square foot building, you're in trouble.
But why did they stop paying, right? And then you said something and you kind of skipped over it. We've talked about this on the show a number of times. You kept looking for a way. From what I have seen, the majority of the schools that closed during that time closed because they didn't adapt. They didn't look for a new way. They said, we can't do what we're normally doing. And they panicked and
Hmm.
they tried to hold on to what they had without adapting. And I
Well,
find that approach so ironic coming from a martial artist because it is one of the things that is most commonly instilled at the schools that I've trained at. If something's not working, you got to try something else.
right. And isn't it funny but a lot of people are stuck in this is the way we've always done it. This is the way.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was at a different school, the pandemic hit, classes shut down. I got on Facebook Live and
Hmm.
I taught to whoever wanted to watch.
Right.
But I was the only one there doing it. My two other black belts, friends of mine, would come down, and my son, that same
Hmm.
kid I was talking about. Where was everybody else? They weren't there, right? We were masked up. We were doing our thing, but it was fun for me because I was used to teaching by myself anyway. So I just ran a class doing whatever inspired me that day.
Mm.
And then when it got nice out, we went out in the park. And I spent half the summer teaching in the park, and people showed up.
Right.
So I didn't get into the continual Zoom thing that a lot of people got into because I tried it, and it was just weird watching kids playing with their puppies or doing cartwheels while I'm
But the
trying to
key
teach
is you
them.
tried it, right? You kept trying different things to find what worked for you.
Well, the
And I
Facebook
think that
Live
that's so important.
yeah, the Facebook allowed me to do the class, and I don't have to see what they're doing.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want. If you want to eat potato chips while I'm doing class, that's fine. That's on you. But I think that was part of why maybe that school didn't close down. I think, and a lot of people kept paying too
Mm.
in that school. But I mean, clearly they're still open and they're doing well as far as I know. Um, but I gave them people an opportunities here. You can train. You can train if you want to.
Hmm.
So you have no excuse. And then here we are at the park, and I would get a good. At least most of my students showed up. My homeschool
Right.
students, they all showed up.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and then I switched over to Burrillville in the park because they shut down my inside the school program, and I called Parks and Rec. I'm like, give me a place. I need a place, and they're like, well, I ended up at a pavilion, like a concrete
Mm.
pavilion with a grassy field, and we had fun. We had fun, and then it started getting cold, and I'm like, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? I don't have a place to go. I can't go back in the Parks and Rec community center because now they're using it to feed people because of the pandemic. So I'm driving down the street, and I see there's a gas station, and it's got like a little storefront next to it, and it says for rent. And I pulled in, and I grabbed the sign. I walked in, and I said, "Where's the guy? Where's
Mm.
where's the owner?" And I literally signed the lease right there on the spot.
Wow.
Well, it was also cheap.
Yeah.
It was cheap. It was like $900 a month for 1,200 square feet, 1,100 square feet.
And you were there for a bit, right? You were there
I was
for,
there for 3 years, and then they
yeah.
sold the building and unceremoniously booted me.
Yeah. But you found another
So
spot.
I have parents who are amazing,
Mm.
and they were DMing me places in town that were available. Well, one of them was a realtor, and he's like, I found this spot, and I grabbed that really fast. It
Mm.
was a dance studio, so it was very well outfitted. I just had to
Oh,
knock
perfect.
2 walls down,
Hmm.
and I have a really nice little space now. My students like it, parents like it. It's close to where I was. It's a little bit more expensive, but I am never going to live beyond my means,
Hmm.
and it's not going to happen because I'm too paranoid. So, I mean, how much does it really cost to open a karate school?
It doesn't have to cost much.
No, right? I got, like 5 used Wave Masters on the marketplace. Some of them were free. Granted, they leak, but can't have everything
Swap them
precious.
out for sand.
Well, eventually you get money and you buy new ones,
Yeah,
and he
exactly.
has a sale.
Exactly.
But it goes back to that: keep adapting and keep finding ways
Yeah.
and keep fighting. And that's my mission. Don't stop just because something's standing in your way or someone is standing in your way. That old adage, if you have a bully, you got to take them out right away. And I
Mm.
don't mean that literally, but take them down right away. I'm not the one. I practice these statements with my students. Nope, I'm not the one. Sorry. And that's it. Um, so, so that's where I am now. I'm seeing the fruits of my labor. And as anybody else who's opened a school, including
Mm.
yourself, it takes time. It takes time, and you have to be patient.
It takes
But you
more
do
time than people realize. It
huh?
always takes more time than you realize. Everything takes more time than we want it to.
But at the end of the day, I do my little dance, and my students walk out of the door with a smile on their face, and
Mm.
that's all I care about. That's literally all I care about. Can they kick? Yeah, they can kick. They can spar. Are their forms perfect? Sometimes when they want to. It's on them. Um, can they defend themselves? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they can
Mm.
in a related, way. I mean, if a 200-pound man wants to attack an 8-year-old, there's not much you can do about it. But if a 10-year-old picks on an 8-year-old from my school, and I've seen some of the fruits of that. And then I see others, they choke and they freeze and they get,
Mhm.
they get bullied, but I'm giving them the tools.
Right. Awesome.
I don't know what else anyone can do.
You're doing it. We're gonna we're gonna start to wrap here.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna throw it back to you in a minute to close up. Final words. You know the show. You know how we do this. Um, before we do, how do people get a hold of you? Website, social media.
I'm on Facebook. I don't even, it's just Village Martial Arts on Facebook. Um, my website is villagetsd.com. I'm trying, it's funny because I don't even know all of my social media.
Okay, that's okay.
That's kind of sad. I'm gonna find my Instagram here. It's at Village Martial Arts with an underscore between each word,
Okay,
and that's basically it. Um,
okay.
but if they go on my website or find me on Facebook, that's pretty much everything they need to know. People can call or text 401-575-8477. I'm always available.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to have you close in a minute. I really appreciate you being here. But to the audience, thank you for being here. Thanks for spending some time with Audrey and I today. And I hope you will check out her social media. I hope you'll check out Kataro, and whether you're interested in the autism awareness belt promotion that they're doing or any of the other amazing things. I have several Kataro belts. They make the best belts, hands down. Great stuff. WK10 saves you 10% on your first order. They have a wholesale account. They do a bunch of other cool stuff. Check them out. And if you have not signed up for the Martial Arts Radio email list, you are missing out. whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. Hit the subscribe tab at the top. Audrey, how are we going to end today? What are your final words or thoughts for the audience?
I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm so
Thank
sorry
you.
that I took so long to get to
It
get
it
here.
took the time it needed to take.
Isn't isn't it true though that maybe it's not for everybody, but sometimes I look at some of your other guests and I think to myself, well, they're really, they're really much better than me, or they're really important, or they're really,
Some of them.
successful. And who wants to hear what I have to say? But then I've met other school owners who have only been in business a couple of years and they're struggling, and they
Hmm.
they need that encouragement that yeah, you can do this. This is not it's
For
not
sure.
brain surgery yet, but I don't know. I just if you have a child, put them in martial arts. There is no downside. And that was a direct quote from a parent who couldn't stand any of it. And she
Mm.
put her daughters in my class. And within a few weeks, she's like, there really is no downside. And I'm like, no, there isn't. Not for your whole life. If it wasn't for karate, I would be in constant pain. I would probably be walking on a cane right now. And that's a whole nother episode of what martial arts has done for me personally. Um, but your kids deserve the opportunity and the skills to stand up for themselves and not be victims and not be insecure, and learn that empowerment that martial arts gives everybody. There is, like I said, no downside. So thank you for having me on. I have a quick story. You can edit
Okay.
this out if you want, or you
Okay.
can leave it in. I have this one little student. She's a little girl. She's like 7,
Hmm.
and her demeanor is very
Mm.
all the time, and she doesn't make a peep. Sometimes I see her come out and she'll spar or whatever, but most of the time she's like, it's like super, super self conscious, anxiety, all of it. And I had her in beginner class up to, because when you go to purple belt, you go to intermediate class.
Hmm.
And I kept telling her that. And I felt her slipping away from me
Mm.
because she was down the end, highest ranking of the beginner class, but I had a whole bunch of new white belts who kind of demand more attention. And I'm trying to keep my eye on her and make sure, she's tightening up and doing whatever. But I felt like she was not feeling it anymore. So I finally, right after she got her purple belt, I had her dad bring her to intermediate class. Kids are bigger, they're older, they're more skilled. And he thought, well, this might be intimidating for her. And I'm like, no, she needs to see where she's going, not
Mm.
be annoyed by a bunch of 6-year-old little boys. So, and that's what I feel like it was. It
Mm.
was annoying to have all those little, blah, 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 little kids are all excited, whatever.
Yeah.
I bring her in there, her first class. The older girls kind of like, oh, she's so cute, and we're kind of mentoring her.
Mm.
Everybody was encouraging her. And by the end of class, I saw that kid smiling, laughing, and actually talking, which I hadn't heard a peep out of her.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, that decision you make, and you're like, I hope this doesn't backfire on me and I lose her because she's too scared or whatever. It went the right way. It went the way I thought it was going to go. So it kind of, it shored me up as far as my confidence level of my intuition was correct,
Mm.
so that I need to listen to it more. And as instructors, we need to do that. I don't know if it's a mom thing, a parent thing, or a karate instructor thing, but my intuition was correct. And she walked out of there a happy kid with her head up. She was saying, she was kiaing, she was doing
Oh, I
all
love
of it.
it.
I know, it was
I
so
love it.
exciting. That
In one
that to me
class.
was worth it. One
Yeah.
class with the right students in the right atmosphere. They talk they talk more intelligently. They're not just being silly. They're having fun. They're helping her. It was perfect. It was
Mm.
absolutely perfect. So that's my inspiring story of the day. You can keep that on there if you want.
Thank you.